Well, for the obvious reasons, that's why it's called Music City, you know. So, but I think outside of the whole music thing here, there's also an appreciation of the arts in general. And there's so much history here, and I mean cultural history as well as artistic history, you know, not just the music, but history in itself, you know, dating back to the Civil War, which I'm a huge historical nut. So every time I'm here, I just soak it up.
And you've been here for writing and music. Have you ever been here to have your art on display, though?
Never. This is a first, definitely, and it's a thrill to be here at the Ryman Gallery, and I'm sitting amongst it. So you know, I'm soaking it up too. But it's terrific being here because this particular gallery is the largest gallery we've exhibited in. You know, so what we're able to do here is have a complete retrospective of my work from like the mid-90s all the way through to like a couple of weeks ago. You know, this, as I say, I've said before, there's stuff on the walls here that I think the paint's probably still drying on, you know.
And this is obviously not your new career. You're not ending your songwriting. Talk about it being an extension of another art form.
Well, it's really not an extension. I mean, it's a parallel in a way because, as I say, I've been painting. Yeah, I've been writing songs for almost 45 years, I think. But the painting thing is for half of that time, you know. But I probably would have been doing it before then if I'd had the opportunity. But before, you know, sort of 25 years ago is when I really started in earnest. But what I was doing back then, you know, before that period in time, was a very sort of transient lifestyle. You know, I mean, I was on the road a lot, so I had no place to settle down and really create. And it wasn't until I sort of moved to a place up in the central coast of California. I mean, I'd lived in California since 1970, but I moved up to the San Ynez Valley above Santa Barbara, and the house that I bought had a large building next to it, which was a racquetball, had a racquetball court in it. And being that I didn't really feel inclined to play racquetball, I decided to use that as my studio. So I sort of just gutted it and moved in there and bought in some big canvases because obviously, you know, being a practitioner of abstract painting, you know, I wanted to paint on large canvases. So I just went in there and started flinging paint around and sort of found my footing and sort of have moved forward. And my art in general has changed over the years somewhat. And that's what's so wonderful about being here. You get a total retrospective of it. I mean, there are pieces in here. There's a whole set in here called, you know, that I did probably 10 years ago, but I've never been in a space where I could show them. You know, so it's a set called Patriot Acts, and there's 10 pieces, and they're being able to be shown here for the first time, along with the new stuff that I'm doing, which is very much in the, I would say, sort of 60s pop art vein.
And did you always, like as a child, did you like to draw? Was art a part of you as much as writing was?
Yeah, I guess as a child I was a doodler, so I think that probably encompasses both of those things. You know, I mean, you know, I thought I could write the great American novel when I was 5, so you know, I was probably sketching alongside of that. But I was, oh, that's my phone. I'm sorry about that.
You're fine.
Okay, so cut.
Did you need to get it?
No.
Did you need it?
My phone never rings, okay? It never rings, you know. People know that I don't like phones, so they don't call me. Okay.
And,
Did you hear my ringtone? It's Bonanza.
I didn't hear it.
No. Okay. Let's go. Let's take 2. Okay. I don't know if you want to ask that question.
Talk a little bit about your inspiration. These paintings are obviously come from somewhere. Talk about where you pull your inspiration. What a couple of them mean.
Well, okay, let me give you a heads up on that. The thing is that it's interesting because in the abstract world, you know, it's a whole different thing than painting a landscape, right? You know, and for some strange reason, I live in a very rural area, and you would think that would be inspirational to me. But the thing for me is that I get inspiration much more from urban landscapes. You know, if I go to New York, I see skylines. Skylines are very prevalent in things that I do because they're they have that geometrical kind of block thing, which I like, and which is a part of abstract expressionism. But at the same time, it's like writing songs. I mean, they all come from the same place. And I always say, one turns out on a sonic level and one turns out on a visual level. But it's all in the, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I subscribe totally to that. So, the other thing about a lot of what I do is that it's very varied, and I used to sort of get very paranoid about the fact that my stuff was varied and it wasn't one single kind of style. Rothko or Jackson Pollock, Jackson Pollock, sorry. They painted in the same style for most of their life, and I just can't be locked into that. So I don't want to be chained into one place. I have to be able to move, and I guess that's from being a songwriter. Being a songwriter, you want to write songs in so many different styles. So I guess that flowed over to the painting side of things.
Did you ever have an inspiration for a piece that could have gone either way? Or that wrote a song and did a painting, or did you ever have anything like that? Yeah,
that's actually a very good question, because yes, it does work like that with songwriting. I think it works like that with painting. I mean, for me in songwriting, I like titles. I come up with titles for songs probably before I start writing the song, and the same thing with painting. Sometimes I'll think of a title and create around it. And then again, it's so diverse, because, people often ask me, why I call a painting a certain name. And that's a very hard question to deal with, because sometimes you start something knowing exactly what you want to do. I sketch most of what I paint before I do it. And sometimes I have an exact vision of what I want to do, whereas other times, I will sort of think I have the idea, and then I'll decide that I don't kind of like that idea, and I'll move it into another direction. I mean, there are many paintings that I've done that I haven't liked when I've completed them, and I've painted over them. So maybe in 1,000 years, people will scrape under my paintings like Leonardo da Vinci and find something underneath them.
Was that your hope?
Not that I'm putting myself into the.
Is that your hope to see this side of your career go as high as
I mean, I would love for that, I mean, who knows? There's that stigma about if you're in another field of the arts, you're not allowed to be creative in another. It's like actors aren't allowed to be singers, singers aren't allowed to be actors, and I guess lyricists aren't allowed to be painters. But I continually bow to the words of Duke Ellington, who said, everybody should be proficient in two things. And and you know what, this is what I do most of the time. Songwriting's almost like a hobby to me, because I only do that when there's a project to be done, and I've said that many times too. This is what I do every day. Not every day, but this is, there are songwriters who get up in the morning, and the people, but to me, those are the professional songwriters, and this town is full of them. I mean, it's almost like cubicle songwriting. You go into these publishing houses, and like the old Brill building thing, there's people writing songs in all these different booths, And I remember years ago coming here, and people tried to sort of incorporate me in that, and I said, no, I don't work like this. I just don't do this. I'm a solitary writer to start. I'm a solitary painter. I'm a solitary writer, and that's not my style of doing things.
And I read somewhere that Elton John had said that he simply gets to sing what's in your heart and what's on your mind. Talk about that and how honored you are for that. But then also, on another hand, then you get to do this, and people get to see what's on your mind through you. So you kind of have both.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I get the lion's share of the cake, because I get to get the first and last word. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is that he has that ability to make things his own. I write the stories, but at the same time, you have to remember that in everything that we've done, I try, aside from anything that is personal, if I write something, I want to make sure that it's something that he understands. You know, I mean, I have the luxury of probably writing stuff from my point of view, but I'm always conscious of that. So I want to make sure it's something that he feels, is comfortable singing and writing to. So that's why I think a lot of the stuff, a majority of the stuff that we've done is just telling stories. I mean, there's not too much of it that is actually personal. But again, you can't help but do that. You can't help but throw your feelings into some things, and some of them are intensely personal. And I've written them from my point of view, and I've written them from his point of view. So I think I've covered it, you know.
And your name associated with his, obviously, in all those songs. Is it nice to have something that your name's just associated just with you? This is mine. These are my feelings. It's, you know.
Well, yeah, it's a luxury, you know. I think and again, I've said this many times, one of the beauties of being able to exhibit your work is the fact that, you know, when you're in your studio and you're creating anything I paint, I don't really get to see it in the right light. So I paint it, I maybe shine a floodlight on it to give it a sort of gallery look, you know, and see how it might look. But then it either goes, you know, to the warehouse where my stuff is kept, or it goes into, you know, I have crates in my studio that they're just racks that my paintings are put into, and then they come and collect them and take them away. So at home, I don't have the luxury of seeing everything in this kind of environment. So it's almost like when you write a song and then it's recorded, and then all the sweetening's put on it, or not, and you hear the finished product, you know, that's always a trip. And it's the same thing here. When I see my stuff hung in a gallery, hung and lit the right way, that's a big, big thrill, and especially this, because it's such a large retrospective, you know.
Do you mind going over and maybe showing me one piece and talking about kind of where it came from?
Yeah, well, before I do that, though, you know, I have to explain that so many of these pieces just come from the mind and the heart, you know, so sometimes there really isn't anything to say, you know, it's just color on canvas, and it's whatever, you know, the titles, again, you know, they're just handles. It's sometime I have a title maybe before I do a painting, and I know exactly what I want to do. But then sometimes, you know, I'll have an idea in my head, and I'll create it, and I'll put it together, and I'll stand back. Like this one actually right behind me. You know, this was something I sketched out. I sketched out the colors, and this piece is called Dragon Wall, which is kind of interesting. It's right behind me, you know. But I had no idea what I wanted to call this. I just had the geometrical kind of design of it, and I knew the colors I wanted to use. And I painted it, and then I just stood back from it, and it's like, what's the first thing that comes into your head? And I think there's a tail piece up here that kind of reminded me of a dragon, you know, of a kind of a lizard feel. And that was hence Dragon Wall, you know. This on the other hand, this kind of speaks for itself, you know. This actually was one of the last pieces I painted before I came here.